Yo guys, what is up? Max here, Diablo 4 video, and today we're going over the much requested Druid tier list. Now, this is going to be a tier list off of my impressions and opinions. This is an opinionated tier list, which means that you are welcome to disagree. I just wanted to give my thoughts on the state of Druid. Now, for this tier list video, we're going to be going over tier lists for different stages of the game. I don't think that there's like one build that is the best build for every single stage, as there are a lot of stages to Diablo 4 and the leveling process. So in this video, we're going to go over what I think is the best leveling builds, the best mid-tier builds, the best endgame builds, and then the best like Lilith killing builds for Druid. So we're going to have multiple tier lists for different builds, and we're breaking down which builds I think really shine. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. So showing on screen is my leveling tier list. We are ranking specifically from 1 to like 45-ish here. And Companion Druid, I think, is the worst leveling setup for Druid. Once you get all of the aspects for Companion Druid, it is quite strong. However, once you get all the aspects for any of these builds, they're pretty strong, and I think stronger than Companion Druid. There are some really big buffs coming to the Companion Druid build, and I think it could actually be quite nice, but that would probably move it up to B tier. I don't think it would still be A tier. Next up in the B tier is the Poison Shred Druid. Now, Poison Shred is nice. It's got a movement to it. You deal all right AoE damage, not as good as these other builds up here, and you've got okay single target. I think Shred is like obviously one of my favorite skills in the entire game. I just don't really enjoy leveling with it. And then we get to our A tiers. This season in the A tiers, I think the best like A tier leveling build was Pulverize, mainly because you get the shockwave aspect. That's like the big thing that you need for Pulverize to start feeling good. Yes, Pulverize doesn't have great single target damage, but leveling this season was all about doing strongholds and killing big groups, and Pulverize is great at that. Followed by Tornado. I think for the two Storm leveling skills, obviously these are without the Tempest Roar, I'd like Tornado more, and then Lightning Storm followed after. Tornado does have the single target, while Lightning Storm has the bigger AoE. Both are pretty strong. The big issue with Tornado is you really need that Seeker aspect for it to start feeling good. Versus Lightning Storm, you actually have less requirements. So with those, it's kind of a luck thing. If you can get the Seeker aspect, obviously Tornado, I think, is better. If you can't find it, if you really want to level with a Storm skill, I would use Lightning Storm. And the winner in our S tier for leveling Druids, I think, is the Poison Slide Druid. In terms of just leveling strength, Landslide is one of the hardest hitting skills, and this season they gave us a Poison Creeper that can cast it. Poison Creeper was already probably the best AoE leveling skill because it just deletes mobs, and now it's casting guaranteed crit landslides. If you were playing Druid and leveling this season, you should definitely try out a Poison Slide or the subterranean aspect version of Druid, because I think it was hands down the strongest leveling experience that you could have for the Druid. And not only is it good early, but it goes all the way to the late game. Going on screen right now is my rankings for World Tier 3. These are your level 45 to 65 builds, and builds that can kill Elias earlier or complete that World Tier 4 capstone dungeon earlier are going to be higher up on the list, because getting online and doing that dungeon quickly to unlock World Tier 4 is going to be a priority in World Tier 3. So to start us off on our list, I've got Companion Druid in D tier. Just not great. I've kind of gone over that already. In C tier, we've got Lightning Storm. Now, Lightning Storm and Tornado, these are still going to be the human variations of these builds. Tornado and Lightning, you can't get a Tempest Roar in World Tier 3, so still human form. And Lightning Storm, while I can kill a lot of things very quickly, you're going to notice the damage fall off on Elias pretty hard. In B tier, we've got Tornado. Tornado, still a solid mid-game build, very, very solid, but not quite as good as our Earth builds that are up here. And Poison Shred, this is going to be using Shred with the Vine Creeper, stacking up poison damage, pretty good clear speed, decent single target, just not as good as our Earth builds up here. But I really do like Shred for like a mid-game build, just because you can clear content pretty quickly and get through those like awkward phases as well. Now, in our A tier is going to be our Earth builds. So Pulverize Landslide, Pulverize Druid, and Trample Landslide are all very similar builds. I just want to clarify why these builds are ranked differently and what they are. So Pulverize Landslide is basically your classic Pulverize build, but you're going to be using aspect of the Trampled Earth to cast landslides for you. Pulverize has issues with spirit cost. Trample will cast a bunch of landslides for you, and it can give you spirit, so you alleviate some of the issues that Pulverize has with spirit, and you get a big AoE, and landslide does a bunch of single target damage, so you can alleviate some of the single target issues that Pulverize has. Followed by Pulverized Druid. This is a classic build. There's a lot of build guides out there for it. Pulverize is great. It just doesn't have great single target damage. And then lastly, in our A tier, we've got Trample Landslide. This is basically the build that I was running for Season 0 before the subterranean aspect came out that allowed our Vine Creeper to cast landslides for us. Classic Trampled Earth, casting landslides, Terra modes. It's still really, really good, but Pulverize was also really great this season, and you can get the best of both worlds with the Pulverized Landslide build. And lastly, for our S tier, is going to be the Poison Slide Druid. Now, I know I do have some bias to this build because I've covered it extensively, but I've covered it extensively because it is so good. I had people coming into my chat telling me they killed Elias at level 52. I saw a clip of DatMods basically one-shotting Elias as the Poison Slide Druid at early level. I personally killed Elias at level 56 on this build. It's got good defenses. It's got good single target damage. It just really didn't have many weaknesses, and it's a build that transitions very seamlessly into World Tier 4 as soon as you start grabbing those ancestral pieces of gear. It doesn't have the issues that Pulverize does, which is single target damage, and that is why I'm ranking it above Pulverize. Pulverize is a really strong mid-game build, but for particularly killing Elias, I think it falls off a bit, and so that's why I've got Poison Slide in S tier. Now showing on screen is my tier list for World Tier 4. This is level 70 to level 100, and the builds at the top of this tier list will be able to push Nightmare Dungeons and push them harder. Now, in our D tier, we've got Companion Druid. In our C tier, we've got Lightning Storm Druid and Tornado Druid. These are the human versions without Tempest Roar. You're really going to want to find a Tempest Roar for these builds. They start to fall off pretty hard late game. Next up, we've got Pulverize, Trample Landslide, and Poison Shred. All fantastic mid-game builds. They start to fall off a little bit more in the higher Nightmares. You can still push really high with these kind of builds. I just don't think they're quite as good as our A tier or our S tier builds. Then in our A tier, we've got Lightning Storm with the Tempest Roar, Lightning Shred. This is going to be a Tempest Roar version of Shred, and the Pulverized Landslide. Pulverized Landslide and Pulverized Druid are pretty neck and neck, honestly, but Pulverize just not quite as good as the Tempest Roar versions of the Druid builds, in my opinion. And then we get to our S tier. For our S tier, our best Druid builds right now are the Bulwark builds. Bulwark is well documented that it is so freaking strong. It was the best build in Season 0 for Druid for pushing Nightmare Dungeons, and they didn't nerf it then. In the upcoming patch, it's not getting nerfed. It feels like it should be getting nerfed. However, there's just no changes coming to Bulwark right now, and for that reason, it is the absolute strongest. If that does get nerfed, I think NATO is going to be the best build for Druid for endgame, but at the moment, Bulwark is just so strong. And I'm lumping up the Shred version of Bulwark, the Crone Staff version of Bulwark, and the Low Life version of Bulwark kind of all into one category there. Next up, we've got the NATO Druid. I recently started playing Tornado, and it is gross strong. The amount of damage that it puts out, single target damage, AoE damage, it can push high nightmares, it can do just basically everything, and you do need a Tempest Roar to really get it going, but it just does all the content, and it does it fast. Really, really good. And then behind that, we've got Poison Slide Druid. Poison Slide is worse than the Tornado without Bulwark. Once you start incorporating the Bulwark or the 3.0 version of Poison Slide, I do think it is better than the NATO build, but without Bulwark, definitely worse. The NATO build is really, really strong. And those are my S tier rankings for Druid. Next up is our tier list ranking for killing Lilith. At our S tier is Shrednado. There just isn't a better build for killing Lilith right now than stacking up poison damage with Toxic Claws with NATO and then detonating it with Shred. Then we've got the Lightning Shred. This is going to be stacking up poison damage with Shred and Toxic Claws without using Tornadoes. Still kills Lilith very quickly, just not as good as the NATO variant. And then in B tier, we've got Bulwark Druid and where NATO still hits pretty hard. And Bulwark, it actually would probably move that a little bit above where NATO. I was hitting Lilith for 35 millions with Bulwark explosions, where NATO doesn't quite do that much damage, and its Bulwark's got a little bit more survivability. In C tier, we've got Poison Slide, decent single target damage, can get Lilith done, but definitely weaker than Bulwark and where NATO. And then D tier is everything else that I just wouldn't recommend even attempting Lilith with, which is Lightning, Pulverize, Trample, Poison Shred, Companion Druid, and so on and so forth. That is our Lilith tier list. And lastly, this is our speed farming tier list. This is just builds that will blast dungeons the fastest. We're talking about dungeons that are anywhere from on level to like 5 levels, maybe even 10 levels above you, but just really easy dungeons. Blizzard removed basically any incentive to do harder content. You're not going to earn more experience from killing an enemy that is 50 levels above you versus killing an enemy that is 10 levels above you. So the fastest way to level is just blasting low level dungeons, unfortunately. And the builds that are going to do that best are the Lightning Shred build and Lightning Storm build, followed by the Wernado build. I do find Lightning Storm to be a bit faster than Wernado, just because you get those instantaneous big damage pops. And when you're doing low-level content, the single target damage isn't an issue. But Lightning Shred is the undisputed fastest, fastest clearing dungeon build. And then in A tier, we've got Poison Slide, Poison Shred, and Pulverized Landslide. In B tier, I've got Bulwark Druid and Pulverized Druid. You just don't really need Bulwark for early game blasting or like low level dungeon blasting. It just doesn't really make sense. It only starts to really make sense in harder content. And the like lightning builds, the Tempest Roar builds are going to be destroying dungeons very, very, very quickly. And that is kind of our tier list for speed farming. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. This video was based off of my personal experiences with these builds. If you've had a better experience or a worse experience with these builds and thought that they should have been higher or lower, let me know down below in the comments. I will catch y'all in the next one, guys. Take care. Peace.